We're live. Hey, welcome everybody. Another Thursday night, another episode of The Good Life. Here talking health, wealth, love, and happiness, all the things that are helping propel us to our best life, guys. I'm Chris. Got Stu here, got Kobi here. Say what's up, guys.
How you doing? Yo, I'm excited. Can you guys hear me good?
Can hear you great. I can hear you. Stu, where you at? I think your IG cut off. But are you here with us, Stu? Can you hear us on this side? Maybe not. It's okay. We're rocking and rolling. Stu is gonna figure it out. We're gonna make it happen. But either way, guys, we're jumping in. We want to finish up and kind of continue our conversation from last week. Thank you for everybody that's been joining us on all these lives. Again, we're coming to you every single Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then 9 o'clock, we're jumping in the Clubhouse right afterwards. We're also on Instagram Live right now. So again, share this with a friend, tag somebody, let somebody know that we're here having this conversation, because tonight's going to be another good one. We're talking about entrepreneurship, right? This is what we were talking about last week. We were having a good conversation about kind of the 5 things that an entrepreneur needs to get started, or stuff to think about in order to go on their journey. And we wanted to just dive deeper into that conversation a bit more, because there was so much, all 3 of us being entrepreneurs and being in our journey, we just knew that there was so much more value that we could add, so much more of the conversation that we wanted to give. But before we jump in, Kobi, go in and kind of like let us know kind of what we were talking about last week. Fill us in, get us reacquainted with those 5 things, and then we'll dive in from there.
Thank you, Chris. Yo. So if today is as half as good as last week was, it's going to be a great episode. So I'm pretty happy. Yeah. So the top 5 things we outlined as to entrepreneurship. Number 1, what is your why? Like, why are you doing it? What do you want to do it for? Number 2, we gave you a couple of books. Started out with 2, ended up with 6. What is the cash flow quadrant? I think that's the one that, if I had to pick one out of this, it would be that one. And I'll let you guys chime in on this. But that's where Robert Kiyosaki breaks down employee from being self-employed, from being a business owner, from being an investor. So the 4 cash flow quadrants. Then the tax and legal playbook that lays out the practicality of how to set things up. The E-Myth Revisited, which was probably the one we had the most consensus on. The one thing, and then the subtle art of not giving a, just in case we got moms in here, or, but, and also thinking about the next one is thinking about different types of businesses, right? So not all businesses are Fortune 500 companies. Not all businesses are small mom and pop shops. Not all businesses are medium size, maybe got a couple franchises. Right, there's different types of businesses and for different purposes. So like really thinking about what is it that you are trying to create. And then 4 would be get the most out of your current 9 to 5. So if you already have something going, make sure you're squeezing all the juice out of that. Make sure you're a student of business. Make sure you're asking questions. Make sure you're actually the best at what you do. And then I think what we ended up with, and you guys can add whatever you want to add after this, is 2 things that every wealthy person, like really wealthy family or person, has. 1, business, and 2, real estate, some sort of real estate.
Hey, real quick, we're just going to pause for the cause, because Danette said, hey, we're good for Clubhouse 9 p.m. Just throwing that out there, guys. The after party is 9 p.m. in Clubhouse. We're throwing that in there. But anyway, back to the question. Stu, what did you have from that? You want to add your 2 cents?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just the recap from last time is, there's just a lot of myths out there that I think we really started to kind of chip away at some of them last week. And, there's just so many ideas of like, what is it like to be an entrepreneur, that I love how we had like some like key takeaways. We had the top 5, and I just think that I'm excited that we're doing a part 2. This is the first time we've done a part 2 on a topic so far. I'm sure there's gonna be more to come.
Yeah.
But what's been great is there's just so much to think about if you've never been an entrepreneur before. So we're just going to try and lay it all out, bust myths, organize it so it's super easy to like process, digest, bite off like one step at a time.
That's huge. That's huge. And to kind of give you, again, the big macro picture of this is the show called The Good Life, because we believe in people getting to the best version, right? Or the life that they want to live, designing their ideal life. And we were just talking about this and chopping it up a little bit before we had come on this live. And we basically said, like, listen, it's really going to be very difficult to get to the good life, the life you want to live, the life you want to design, if you don't own something. Like if you don't have ownership in something, right? So the number 5 point that could be have made that said that, you know, wealthy people are either owning both, if not one or the other, of real estate or a business, right? That just, again, comes down to ownership. Ownership. I believe, and I know the guys would probably echo something similar, if you're not owning something, it's going to be very difficult to design your life. If you're always renting your income, meaning you have a job, and again, nothing wrong with having the job, but you then might have to look at investments and things to own, land, things on the real estate side. You have to own something so that it can generate you more income, so that you have assets, so that you have a way to start to build this wealth or whatever it is to that you want to get to that good life. But it comes through ownership. Let's make no mistakes about this, right? It comes through ownership. And that's why we're having the conversation around entrepreneurship, because there's a lot of you out there. There's a lot of people listening right now that either want to break out into entrepreneurship. You want to start your own business. You're in the process of going down that path of having your side hustle or your side business while you're still at your 9 to 5. But we want to just give you some insight and maybe some guidance on some of the things to be thinking about as you're doing this. So again, that's a big takeaway, that you got to own something, guys. That you got to own something. It's the only way to really get there.
Yeah, I kind of want to segue off of that too. Like, while right now the topic at hand is ownership over assets, let's also talk about, maybe this might segue into a lot of what we're doing today, ownership over, you know, your personality traits, over situations, like taking accountability versus blaming. So thank you for the alley-oop there, Chris.
You're welcome. I got you.
Throw it down. Yeah, man. And we're talking about ownership, but I think, you know, at least for me, let me speak for myself, man. Ownership is awesome. Ownership is like over here. But right now I'm still kind of, you know, waiting and building. So I think an area, what I want to ask from you guys is kind of looking at building the foundation to set you up to be in a position where you can focus on really building up your craft, right? Because we know it takes time. So I wanted to ask you guys kind of your thoughts on that, and like what would you say around that? What tips would you get? What questions would you have?
Yeah, that's huge, right? I'll dive right in, because we had touched on this a little bit, but can't overemphasize it enough. Your personal financial state, right? Your personal financial state has everything to do with your preparedness for becoming an entrepreneur, right? I joke with people all the time about, you know, sometimes your eagerness for home ownership is taking away your ability to become an entrepreneur, right? The more liabilities you have, the more things that you have that are weighing you down, that are holding you down. And I know we'll probably touch on some of those areas, some of those pitfalls, right? But those things are hindering you a lot of times from taking the risk, investing in your business, doing the things necessary to grow your business. A lot of our personal financial life, what we actually do with our own income and expenses, right? What our personal cash flow is, what our savings is, what our debt position is. All these little things in our personal financial life have everything to do with how then we will either A, start a business, or B, how we will run that business, because money is one of those foundational things, right? I could probably go on tons of different tangents on this, right? But honestly, guys, understanding that if you're going to start a business with a very low financial IQ, right? It's probably not going to work out for you. You've got to have some disciplines in place. You've got to have some IQ in place financially in order to make that thing happen. And I believe that's foundational. So
I love how you started with that, because it made me realize the three of us each have a very different, I think, idea of the main foundational building block, which I think contributed to why we went into particular areas of coaching that we did between health, wealth, and happiness. And yeah, for me, I personally know that I would not have been able to make the switch from employee to entrepreneur in such a drastic cutoff fashion had I not had financial stability. So I think that it is hugely important. And I think for me, what would help anybody, whether, I think we all talk about like having like a certain number of living expenses, for example, as just one piece of the financial literacy that you want to have in place. And I think on top of that, what was even more important for my journey was there's so much time in my life where I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what my priorities were. I didn't have the best control over my motivation, my personality, my communication skills. Wasn't necessarily, as an only child, able to see other perspectives. And a lot of that emotional side and the mental side was big for me, because I could not have gone through the startup year with such a drastic change had I not had like a lot of like stability mentally.
Could be.
Yeah, I think that's big time, bro. And actually, I want to ask you a little bit, clarify on the startup year. What do you mean by that?
Well, for me, I just had my 1 year, March 6th. So
there we go.
It's pretty fresh for me. Yeah. So my startup year, I think the startup year for everybody is, there's just a lot of like things that come up, whether it's in your head or outside of it. Pandemic would be one. Just self-doubt, insecurities that come about as you go through some of the initial like mistakes or failures or lessons learned, however you learn to look at it that best suits you. So yeah, I mean, the first year is hard because you're if you're really doing a cutoff from employee to entrepreneur, then there's a shock factor there.
1,000%, Stu. That is 100% what I believe in, and a lot of people don't understand that little fact that there is a transition to get to entrepreneurship. Guys, we have to think about it. Most of us, and again, unless you grew up in a household where your family were entrepreneurs or they owned businesses or taught you money or something along those lines, then maybe that's a little different. But for most people that grew up with the messaging of go to school, get good grades, right? Get some higher education, go to college, get a degree, work in your field, right? Get a stable, secure, safe, secure job that pays benefits. When that's the message, the messaging, the programming that you get for 18, 20, 25 years of your life, and then you have that decision one day where you start to say, I don't think this is what I want. I think I want to go over here. We've not been equipped to be able to do that. We don't have the tools. We don't know what that's like because we've been programmed to go one way the entire time. So in theory, it's great when people say like, yeah, I just want to start my own business and do it. And that's fine. But there's so much that you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. One of them being your emotional state, right? We don't know that most times we're like emotionally like fat, right? Like we're emotionally like not fit because we haven't been used to having that pressure. We've had a job. We've known where our paycheck was coming from. We've known a lot of variables we haven't really had to think about in our life. And then all of a sudden we step into entrepreneurship, and what happens? Like everything is for us, right? Everything is on us. And we might not know how to handle those things emotionally. And that's one of the things that, Stu, you're talking about, right? Handling that first year, just emotionally, not even from just learning business and getting sales, but like emotionally, how do you handle what failure means? Because you probably had an idea of failure when you were growing up. That's not the same idea of failure when you're an entrepreneur, right? Just all types of things there. And again, this is why we're having this conversation, because it's so important for us to like pull the covers back and just really uncover that this is something every entrepreneur will go through, or every person that is transitioning into entrepreneurship will definitely go through.
Listen, one of the things. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so Kobi, like, what do you think is your foundational item?
Oh, it has to be health. I mean, I don't want to be obvious here, but I think, you know, one of the things that I heard early on that's really key to how I operate and kind of how I've designed the business, where I've designed it and kind of the direction I'm moving in, is realizing that the business is simply an extension of me, right? All the issues I had as an employee, actually, you know, they didn't disappear when I became a business owner or self-employed. They actually just came with me. So it's really an extension of myself and how I'm developing each and every day, you know. So I really look at it. I think you have to approach it, you know, or a fun way to approach it is like, look at it like an athlete. Like every single day you get up to get better and better and better and better at the business, the sport of running a business. But in the process of doing that, the bare minimum is you got to stay healthy, right? You got to be physically fit to run. And I'm not saying that, oh, that's what you have to do to be successful in business. I'm just saying, one, you'll be more effective, you'll be more efficient, and you'll be more fulfilled doing it, right? And I think you guys can speak to this a little bit, but you find that a lot of the issues that come up in business also seem to be kind of reflected in personal life and relationships and things that kind of show up and just simply in how you're being in particular situations, or let me speak for myself, how I'm being in particular situations. So when that changes in terms of whether it's from the personal development aspect or seeing it in the business realm, if it's not reflected, or it should be reflected, and it almost has to be for the business to kind of grow, right? So I think that's a key piece why I think health is really a big piece of it, because you're looking at it just all being just a reflection or an extension of me, of what I am and what I'm projecting and what I'm putting out and receiving back. So I think when you put that first, right, when you put that block first, you can go about your business, you know, in such an excellent fashion that you create that energy that again leads to that monetary success. So that's why I think health has to be like the foundation. It doesn't mean that, you know, you can't do it without. You can see some success without, but I think if you can also choose different types of fuel or whatnot, right? You know, you can burn something that doesn't harm the environment or burn something that harms the environment, right? You can choose to go in different ways. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, just funny enough that used to be an excuse of mine. And I know people that use that excuse also, that when you are busy in business, that health is not the priority. Health, it's tougher to make it the priority. Like I said, I used to fall victim to that, right? When I would be hustling in business and making it happen and building my entrepreneurial dreams and all that, and right, 16-hour days and just making it happen, I wasn't paying attention to my health, right? I wasn't paying attention to my diet as much. I wasn't paying attention. Like, I would eat when I would have time to eat, right? And it probably wouldn't be the best meal and all those types of things. And I know a lot of other, you know, entrepreneurs, people that are hustling in their thing, trying to get it off the ground, that they don't pay attention to their health. They don't pay attention to those things, as important as they may be. And then all of a sudden, right, like, they'll fix it on the back end, like after the money comes in or after the schedule clears up or whatever the case is, they'll kind of come back around to it. But in the, you know, and I'm sure that's, if there are entrepreneurs that are listening, I'm sure there's a lot that struggle with that one side. Could be, it's really about like, hey, if I'm focused here, I don't have time to focus on these things also. So, you know, maybe that's a place for you to jump in. Like, what tips do you have for those type of people that are moving, going hard at their craft, but maybe they're neglecting their health a bit?
I'll say this, man. How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, if you think if we think we're going to get, if we treat your business as an end result rather than as a process based in, sure, that may work, right? Oh, I'll max this out to, 10 million and then sell it, and then I'm good and I'm set and then I can relax. All right. But what you find is that wherever you are, that all your problems and everything that comes with it is there, right? So it's going to show up. It's going to be with you when all that is done. So you might as well use that as a treadmill, as a training process to get better in the process, right? So in terms of like looking at it just strictly from a health perspective, is my sound coming through good?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, cool. In terms of just coming from it from a health perspective, I think really it's removing that burden around health that is associated in terms of like, oh, it needs a lot of time or it requires a lot of this. That's when you look at it in terms of the way that society wants you to look at it. But when you look at it in terms of like, I only really need to do or attend to maybe 7 things, 7 factors, and you can gamify this. And I would encourage you to do so, actually. I only really need to look at these 7 factors, and it can lead to me having phenomenal health and also performance, which is really what we're talking about when we're talking about business, right? We're talking about performance. You can't convince me that being in great health is somehow going to decrease your performance. Because what you're going to lose in terms of maybe an extra hour or an extra hour, 90 minutes really shouldn't take much more than that a day. You're going to absolutely gain that in productivity. And as a result, you're going to produce more and actually be more efficient. See, I think what's missing, to maybe this will appeal to logical folks or like people who like to become broke. What's missing there is a calculation of waste and efficiency, right? So I think once you put that piece in, you kind of realize, or I at least realize, and maybe somebody else will as well, that, oh, okay, that's actually not the most efficient way to get there. It might seem like it for short term, but in the long term, the costs are greater.
Yeah,
so I think when you do that calculation, it's not sustainable. Correct.
Yeah, I like the calculation because it reminds me of the term ROI, return on investment. Like the return on investment from being healthy. If you don't even take into consideration how it helps so many different areas of life, if you just consider the cost of being healthy versus the cost of not being healthy, like living an unhealthy lifestyle that raises indicators of different types of problems or anything like that else that could develop, and then there's medication and surgery and all types of stuff. Aside from that just financial piece, the ROI, like you're saying, of actually being healthy and sound and having the energy to bring to the table every day in a like a sustainable way, like we talked about. The ROI is huge. It's completely worth it because you could spend all that time and energy, like you said, falling into all these excuses of pitfalls, like you mentioned earlier, of why you shouldn't focus on your health. But if you try and change the narrative to how important it is and how the investment is so important, it's big facts. Yeah. I just wanted to say real quick shout out to Cordell. Appreciate you coming on, man. And secondly, there was a question asked earlier by Righteous Snacks, and they were asking something about how like the entrepreneurship, like the entrepreneurial lifestyle, like changes your life and your perspective of life. So I'll go ahead and toss that out there for you guys. It's cool because it's pretty related to that foundational block you mentioned of the extension of your personality, and in this case it's kind of flipped.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of jump in. The first thing that pops into my mind as far as how it's changed the perspective of life is the saying and the quote of, if it is to be, it's up to me, right? If it is to be, it's up to me. And that is a quote that every entrepreneur should live by, or does live by to some degree, that like no one's coming to save you and no one's coming to change this and no one's coming to help. So if it is to be, it's up to me. And when you put that lens on everything in life, if you want to fix your relationship, if it is to be, it's up to me. If you want to fix your health, if it is to be, it's up to me. right? If you want to fix your business, if it is to be, it's up to me. If that is just the mode that you start to be in, and that I, again, speak from the I, that I started to step into as I came into this entrepreneur journey, right? I really was just like, all right, well, if I can't depend on that person, well, I guess I got to do it. All right, well, if I don't have that resource, I guess I got to do it. And that just became the mode of everything. And so now, again, back to the word that we kind of started this with, just taking full ownership of my life, taking full ownership of every aspect of my life. That has been one of the biggest blessings of getting into entrepreneurship and continuing along the journey, because now I feel like I own my life, right? Like I own my time and the things that I have. So yeah, that's how it shifted. By the way, shout out to Rob. That's my guy, Rob, Righteous Snacks. Check him out, by the way. He's got his Righteous Productions. He's got snacks. Appreciate you, Rob, jumping on the live. I know his tagline is everything has to be righteous. Everything has to be righteous. So check him out. He's dope.
Appreciate you, Rob.
Yeah,
and to answer that question from my perspective, how has entrepreneurship molded and changed your life and perspective of life? So for me, I'll put it this way, not to speak in proverbs all the time, but I'll put it this way. It really comes down to figuring out what this experience of life is all about. And it really comes down to being human being, right? It's that second part, being. How are you being? And when you look at business from that perspective, when you look at health from that perspective, when you look at it's actually very simplified, because how you're being about it, how you are going about it, it is really just a very simple set of predictable reactions that you do, or predictable thoughts that you have, or predictable actions that you take, right? And that applies everywhere, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in health, or whether you're talking about your finance, your happiness, your whatnot, right? And I think that's what we really got to look at. And I'll say that's how it's changed. It's changed my perspective from looking at things in isolation of like, oh, now I'm at work, or now I'm at this, or now I'm here, to more so of like, this is an entire expansive experience, and how I'm being consistently dictates the results of all of these areas, right? So I think narrowing it down, what I always say, like 20% of things that you do to get 80% of your results, actually simplifies it, and it allows you to know, oh, okay, this is where I need to spend my time and effort and energy, and improve on that.
That's good.
I love that 80-20 rule, man. Life changing.
That's key. That's key. Stu, what do you got, man? You threw out the question, so.
Well, I think it's a fantastic question. Like I said earlier, I think it's great how it ties into how your personality is an extension. Your business is an extension of your personality. And now the way the question sets it up is, how does your business kind of extend to your personality? And I think for me, we joke on here a lot, like Kobi and Chris have they have much greater mastery in the side of structure. And I kind of have been more of like the wing it guy. And it was interesting. It's fun to put it that way, bro, because it's kind of true. But when it comes to, like, I guess, for example, like both Kobi and I have learned different things about the other side, for me about structure, and for him about flexibility. And those are each our lessons learned for this week. And I think for me, like, I learned how to be way more authentic as a professional, knowing that I got to create my own brand, my own company, and operate how I want to operate, which is my definition of operating, my modus operandi of like myself. And I believe myself to be professional. And on some of my calls, I even allow like some curse words to come out, like when it's very like, because it's just flow. It's how I talk. I mean, construction management, like whatever, like some people make the joke about once a sailor, always a sailor when it comes to language. Like at some point, how you speak is each culture of work, whether it's construction management, military, coaching spaces, whatever. anything. There's a different way to be professional. So for me, it was cool because now that I have my own brand, I wasn't expected to be professional in any other way than what was authentic with myself. So it really helped me tie the two together, because one big problem I had was how there seemed to be this discrepancy in our culture of how you should have your work life and you have your personal life. And that kind of dichotomy in how you act, I mean, it makes life so much more complicated. You tell me I got to live 2 lives? Like, what? So for me, it was really helpful in like making just everything just so synergetic. I guess that would be,
That's huge. That's huge too. Like, it's funny because I tell people that on social, like, why do you have a personal page? Like, people always ask, like, should I have a personal page and a business page? I don't want to put it's like, do you not want people to know your personal life and your business life? Like, do you not, like, do you think they're separate? Like, do you think people will like you in business and not like you personally? Like, why is there, right? Like, why is there that, hang up for people? But yeah, it's this dichotomy of like, you have to live 2 separate lives. And one of the things I love about entrepreneurship is you can be you. You're supposed, like, you flourish as an entrepreneur by leaning into your strengths. That's actually how you flourish, right? You lean into your strengths, like the things that make you you, the things that make you unique. Like, that's what actually makes you successful at. So you start living a life that is around you. That's around like you and your talents and your gifts and your skills. And you start to appreciate you and your day and your time and all those types of things that happens when you're an entrepreneur. Not saying that that doesn't happen if you have a job, but you see it more kind of like Stu said, where it's like, I have work me and then I have off of work me. Right. And that is normally how people are, right? You can't bring your spouse to the job. So there's actually a thing called a work spouse. How crazy is this? This is one of the craziest things that I've ever heard of in my life. And just because I don't have a job, but like, there's things called a work spouse. Like, you're at work so much that like this person is like your spouse at work. And then you actually like go home to like a spouse. Like, this is normal for people. Like, people think this is normal. And I'm like, I don't understand how this, right, won't lead you into relational trouble or all other types of troubles. Like, I don't understand how you think this is normal. But again,
I never thought about that. It's kind of true, bro. That happens.
No kidding.
You're blowing my mind right now. You're right. Oh my God.
No kidding. But that's just how crazy it is to think that we can live separate lives, and people believe that. Like, there's terms. You actually think you can have a work spouse and a actual spouse. Like, and it's a real thing. And yeah, it just doesn't work that way. Again, that's why entrepreneurship is just, it's golden for you figuring out like who you are and really learning about you and your gifts and talents and building a life and a business around those things.
That's hilarious, man. Appreciate you sharing that. You learn something new every day, man. But what I was gonna highlight in that is the first part of that, in terms of what you were saying with like the dichotomy of and how it causes confusion, right? In terms of making decisions quickly and efficiently in your business. So you have this, you're fighting this dichotomy or whatnot. So you're deciding, do I need to go personal or business? Do I need to go business? Well, if you're authentic to who you are, the answer is always there, right in front of you, right? Which is another reason why I think it goes such hand in hand in terms of knowing yourself better, in terms of developing self, to like developing your business, because that's what allows you to be authentic. That's what allows you, because you know who you are. You actually know where you stand, or you can figure, you have a process of figuring it out very quickly if you don't.
It's good, man.
I think the other thing that comes to mind on this is part of that wing it. God, it's fun to say. The wing it like kind of mentality is like, you know, that's kind of okay when you work for somebody else. Like, you've got consistency in your income. You're able to figure out whether or not you're in a position where, you know, you're in good, great, neutral, kind of bad or bad standing at work. And you can kind of play with that, and you can you can kind of wing it. You can kind of stub your toe and like kind of make some like mistakes by just kind of bouncing around. But when it comes to entrepreneurship and building your own business, you don't want to stub your toe with a customer interaction or a business partnership, because there is no good week, bad week with that first impression. So you really pay more attention to the details, and you really try and flow through things rather than force them and see how far you can get knowing you're dancing on some line. Like there's no point to that anymore. Like I think it just makes your whole life flow better.
That's true, man. That's and I think you hit the nail on the head, right? 100%. Like it is about allowing yourself to flow better through life. If whatever those mechanisms are that allow you to do that, like absolutely, it's gonna be huge. Could be. I don't know if you were about to jump in. I don't know if you had anything.
I was trying to get my audio situation.
Okay. Oh, you're all good. You're all good. But yeah, so again, as we're kind of ebbing and flowing, for those of you that are just joining right now, we're having a deeper dive on entrepreneurship, right? Having a deeper talk about this life of entrepreneurship and what this brings. And we started the conversation by just talking about, what our views are, or how entrepreneurship has changed our views. I think that was a question that came in, just about our views. And that's what we've been kind of looking at. And obviously we all have different experiences as entrepreneurs and as people that are starting businesses or have been in business. But we just want to be able to share that with you guys, get a chance to hear some of our stories and give you some insight on what you could be doing throughout these times. Again, we talked a little bit about the fact that financially, I believe that financially, that is one of the things that you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to when you're starting off in this journey of entrepreneurship. What Kobi had said is that, part of, your business is an extension of you. Your business is an extension of you. So think of all the areas in your life that maybe you don't have some discipline, right? Maybe you need some guidance in those areas. Well, that's going to show up in your business. That's going to show up when you're an entrepreneur. And we want to make sure that you're fully aware of those things and able to start to, track them a bit and put some systems in place to get better. So could we jump in there? Because I know that you had there might have been another question that we were going to dive into, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I want to revisit, we already touched on a little bit, is really the idea of your personal finance being an extension, really, that leads you into entrepreneurship. So unless you're getting some sort of like big inheritance, or you're getting some sort of big, even if you're getting a loan, I guess there's still something attached to that, or you somehow have money to get going, because it will take some amount of money. All right, at some point in time, you really have to look at whether you have a 9-to-5 currently, or you have whatever you have of getting revenue or generating revenue consistently, and preferably in something you enjoy. And this takes me back to the idea of education being the first pitfall, but we'll get to that.
We might not have time, bro. We only got 20 minutes. We might need to get to that.
All right, let's do it. Let's do that. So, and really, that being the extension, looking at what are the pitfalls, right? That if you are Mario Karting it through life, the entrepreneurship life, you Mario Karting it. What are the bananas that you got to watch out for? So you don't slip, and you might still be able to finish, but it's gonna get you to 8th place.
Watch out for the blue shell, man.
Yeah, what are some of those bananas for you? That's a question for you guys to jump in on.
I know. I mean,
all right, I'll do my first.
Yeah, go for it.
Cost of education.
There's a lot.
Let's start there.
Cost of education, right?
Let's start there.
If both in terms, you're looking at like kindergartners paying $20K to go to school now, right? But so that if the parents can do that, fine. But once you get and you have charge and everything is in your name in terms of college, I think really the decisions you make around how you finance college kind of leads you into that road of like, do you have the freedom to actually pursue this thing? All right, is your income protected, or is it all going to student loans? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's not going to student loans, I mean, you might be making other decisions. We'll touch on that later. But and really looking at that being like the first stepping stone, unless you've got some magic bullet that nobody else has. So what are some of the other ones?
Man, go ahead, Chris.
No, Stu, you got it, man.
Well, I just to stay on that topic, because I have some buddies of mine that have all of these ideas and ambitions, and they try and make time for them, but they're buried financially because of student loans, man. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go to a state school for college. But some of my buddies went to private school for universities, and wow, I mean, double, quadruple the cost per year. And yeah, I mean, in some cases, like, I think some schools do prepare you better than others, but you gotta look at the opportunity cost. Like, what are you putting in, and what are you gonna still have to deal with many, many years after your education? So I think that's a big one. I just wanted to really hit that home. Good.
Let's just stay there, because I could go on it too. Like,
let's do it.
Listen, at the end of the day, and I don't want to get into the, do we even need, I mean, a whole different conversation. Do we even need, what's the ROI of a college degree in 2021? Right? That question. That
we can go there. Yeah. I think that's fair, man. And always, you guys didn't think I forgot about the book, huh? You didn't think I forgot about the book. So today's book that I'm going to recommend is looking at Debt-Free Education by Anthony O'Neill, or Debt-Free Degree, I believe it's called. Debt-Free Degree by Anthony O'Neill. Like, I mean, that's just, I think he's not the first for sure. I think there's a lot of people that are putting stuff like that out, but he lays it out really nicely in looking at what is the structure of the educational loans that are going out. Mm-hmm. What were they meant to do? How are they functioning now? And how is that affecting your entire setup? Mm-hmm. How you're setting yourself up, like we talked about. So there is ways to go through college without taking on this huge mountain. And if you can do that and gain a skill that generates revenue while you construct both the lifestyle and business that you want, I think if I had gotten that advice when I was in high school, I would have been very grateful.
I think we would all be grateful. I think here's one of the biggest things that I've been trying to figure out. How do we teach a child or someone that's 15, 16, 17 years old that's starting to think about this decision, what skills generate revenue and which ones don't? Because that was the key part of it that you said, Kobi. It's about like, is this degree that I'm going to get, what I'm putting into this, is it going to get me a skill that generates me more revenue? By going to this institution, will I be able to come out on the back end and have more ability to make money? More ability to make money. That's what it's supposed to do. By either giving us a skill, what it used to just be was a credential, right? Piece of paper that used to just get you in the door, get you the extra $20,000. Doesn't work that way anymore. And that's the conversation I believe we need to start having with high schoolers, because I know if we asked them what they wanted to be at 17, and then we told them how 90% of those jobs make zero money or aren't going to make enough for them to go to college and pay for that degree, they might think differently. But there's no school incentivized. There's no, not that I know of, at least, a school that's incentivized to tell kids like, yeah, that doesn't make any money, right? You're not going to want to go to school for that because you're not going to be able to pay for anything. Like, no one's telling them that. So now they're picking these random fluffy degrees and they're coming out without a skill set, and then still with 50, 60, 100, $200,000 in debt that they have no ability to pay off now, right? And that's where I think we have to start having this conversation with them. And then we can get into the debate of what's the ROI of a college degree? Would it be better to use that same money if your child is thinking more along the lines of being an entrepreneur, of being someone that runs a business? Could we use the same monies that you were going to use for that college degree and use it to get them an actual skill set somewhere that's going to help them develop their entrepreneurial, journey, their activities, those types of things. That becomes the debate. But again, they're not having that debate in schools. So you can only have it as a parent. And I don't think there's enough information out there about how much money you actually make doing these jobs. I remember talking to a group of kids where we kind of had something similar to this. And one of the, girls wanted to be a nurse. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, why? And she was like, well, my aunt and my grandma and like all these people were nurses. And I was like, okay, how much do you think a nurse makes? And then we Googled it. And it came up to like this average of like $60,000, $62,000 a year or something, like average. And I'm like, so that's like $5,000 a month. And what are all the things you said you wanted, right? You said you wanted a house and a car and da-da-da. Like, well, $5,000 a month. And then maybe going to school to get a bunch of debt to go be a nurse to potentially make $67,000. Maybe that's not the thing you want to do, right? But no one's having these real money conversations with kids that are that age. And I think that would help a ton.
Well, I mean, Chris, you're hitting on the head, man. Oh, Stu, where are you going to go?
Go for it, man.
You're hitting on the head in the sense of like, of course, this is not going to happen in schools. All right, who are we kidding? It's not going to happen in schools. That's why I always say I got my education and my master's in the street of hard knocks. Like a lot of the stuff that we know, whether it's health, happiness, like money, a lot of these things are not going to happen in schools. Where they're going to get it is on the Good Life show.
That's right.
You see, that's where they're going to get it. Right? They're going to get it right here. That's what you call plugs in business. Like,
no, that was good.
Yeah. Anyway, but what I really wanted to say and comment on is I think really having those conversations like amongst in our communities, right, man, person to person. I tell that simple conversation with like anybody that would listen. All right, so I think we've got to spread it amongst ourselves because it's not advantageous for schools to put that out. It's just not. It's probably bad business on their part to put that out, right? They're making all this money. So we got to look at I think you got to look at how those skills are acquired. Micro degrees, right? Going specifically to the skill. Now, I actually think you could get a nursing degree for a good price that and generate enough revenue that you could have a pretty good base come if you do that in out ratio, right? So maybe you might have to change states or not pay for such an expensive university and go to a community college for 2 years, transfer to a good university, get your degree, and still come out on top, right? Because there is some level of it that makes sense. I don't want to sit here and say, hey, none of it makes sense, which is the position I've taken in the past because I was all like, yeah, right. But some level of that investment makes sense. It's a question of finding what level of that is it for you.
Yeah. And you touched on some great alternatives, like the micro degrees, like very like value added certifications, going from community college to the big school for the last year for the networking and the spotlight aspect of it. There's a lot of different ways out there that I think a lot of people, well, I don't want to say a lot, that I think some people overlook. They see, okay, there's Ivy Leagues, there's all these other schools. Like, man, I guess the one that's most expensive has to be the best value, right? Well, maybe it's not. And I think that's something that's kind of tough for some people to really process because it's so, you want to trust how much they're charging, how much value you're getting. Well, man, you got to figure out how good the school is, and then you got to figure out, like Chris and Kobi were saying, how practical and relevant and how many wages actually come from the different types of things. Now, I have very mixed opinions about college because I got an engineering degree, and that shit changed my whole world. The level of detail that it took my winged personality to. Like I was very conceptual. I was very philosophical growing up, very principle based, and I still have a lot of those things. But it allowed me to see the other end of the spectrum where you boil into immense detail, like the trial and error basis behind science and statistics and things, and then detail. I can't emphasize detail enough. Like it's the devil is in the details. These expressions are all around us. But anyways, I'll get off the engineering hype for a second. Like, I guess for me, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I think Gary Vee said it best. Like, he basically said F you to school, because he could put in all these hours outside of school, studying, doing homework, etc. And I do think it's important to study. I really do. But within reason. He would put in all these hours, and he would get like a B or a C. School really wasn't for him. So he was like, man, if I want to get a B or C, I'm not going to stand out in the eyes of college. So something about this institution isn't working for me. So he spent all his time out in the streets, like selling, learning how to buy something for one price here and sell it for another price here, learning how to exchange value, those interpersonal skills, because he identified that he wasn't getting those in his educational system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, since you're on the Gary Vee train for a second, one of the big words that he uses is self-awareness, and that's really what this comes down to. And we know we're not gonna get it in the schools, but yes, they will get it from the good life. There we go. Right?
I feel like it's my turn. I
know, right? Eventually, you'll close it out. You'll finish that thing out. But self-awareness is the key. I just want a world. Is this too much to ask? I just want a world where, since we're talking education, where kids can actually learn to become themselves, and they don't have to actually fit into some mold of what they're supposed to be. If there's anything we've learned now as we're going through this life, right? Like, we're not supposed to be, and like, we can do anything, right? We'll figure it out, but like, we put kids, like the youth, good old Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future, right? Like, if they are our future, like, we're putting them in this box so early in their life, where it's like Gary Vee had the luxury, and I don't know if it's a luxury, but to be like, yeah, I realize I don't like this, so I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go sell lemonade or flip baseball cards or whatever it is. But the rest of the population that maybe doesn't understand that if I'm not good at this thing, or I don't like this thing, that's not a horrible thing. It's not the worst thing in the world because I don't like school. It doesn't mean I'll be a loser. It doesn't mean I'll work, how they used to tell it, you're just going to work at McDonald's your whole life. Like, no, there is this whole other world, but we have to teach some self-awareness. Not every kid likes to sell, but not every kid likes math or science either. Like, it's okay, but can we find a way to make sure that we're putting kids into the right places so that they can actually flourish, they can enjoy learning? School is supposed to have us enjoy learning. However, when we all get out of school, we reject all learning. Like, that's almost everyone's experience. Mine, a lot of my friends, our experiences, once we get out of school, we're like, I'm never reading a book. I'm not reading a book again. At least there's a period of time before you get back in and you're like, I want to keep learning this. Now this is the stuff I do want to learn. And I think if we just are able to shape kids at an earlier age to lean into their strengths and not just fit into some box, I think we would create more entrepreneurs. We would create more people that are starting to understand their strengths and their skill sets earlier in life. So.
So, I mean, I get that. And I'm going to put this out there. So are you laying that at the feet of parents? Are you basically saying if we had better parents that would lead us right, teach us the way to go, maybe we wouldn't all, have hit these bananas in the road? Is that what you're saying?
Listen, I know we all do our best. We all do our best. But there's some improvements that can happen, right? There's clearly some improvements. And a lot of it, again, it comes down to our mindset, to how we're thinking about things and how we're thinking about that next generation. But absolutely, like, we're responsible as parents. I'm a parent. I'm responsible for my daughter's well-being, for her knowledge, for her information, for how she moves through life, through what she sees. Like, I'm responsible. I wouldn't leave that up to the education system or some teachers. Like, they absolutely can, do some of the work, but like, they're not going to do all the work, right? Like, of course, all the most important information is going to come from us, from the family. That's the way it should be, right?
I'll say this. I think the key word there is should. And I'll say we got to once again follow the money, man, because that's what you're fighting here, right? As a parent, you're literally fighting society, right? To try to give this to this information out, right? First of all, you've got to find it, right? You've got to be deconditioned enough. You got to do enough unlearning, right? And then you have to be able to be a good enough teacher, know it well enough to teach it, right? So that they can pick it up. And so I think I lay it at the feet of the greed of humanity, man, right? Of just like, because if you really ask yourself the question, man, of like, why hasn't, it's not that, if we can all graduate from school and learn these things in terms of as it comes to our health, as it comes to money management, as it comes to how to truly be happy, know yourself and all that stuff, I have a hard time believing that you can't construct and take those curriculums that already exist. It's not like as if they have to like go find it, right? It already exists. It's out there. We found it, or some people have found it. And why then? What is the block? That's what I always ask. Like, what is in the way of that occurring? And having worked in institutions, educational institutions, et cetera, as a whole, and you first you think it's ego, et cetera. Like all of that is at play as well too. But that's a whole lot of money stuff moving around to make these decisions the way they are. So once again, I think we look at that, and I guess if we want to look at the good life, we gotta look at the energy behind the money and make decisions from there.
Touche. Stu, wrap us up, man.
Yeah. So, wow, quick wrap up. Okay. So I think long story short, we're talking about parents, we're talking about teachers, we're talking about, basically influences on kids and who's a big part of that. I do think that there are some people out there that really, really say, okay, teacher, he is yours to influence. For me, I have very much considered homeschooling because I want to be a big part of that, because I've done a lot of work outside the box, and you guys have as well, that I want to make sure my kid has. I want to make sure he's able to think for himself. I don't want him to have his assignments be memorization, which I saw in some of my friends who went to public schools. I can't say that for all public schools, but man, our assignments were very different. Critical thinking versus memorization in high school. And it was just like, why? Like which one prepares you more? I think people's favorite example is like, why do I need y equals mx plus b to pay my bills? So I just really think that education is not evolving anywhere near as fast as other industries because the money's not there. And interesting, you can take two perspectives with that. It could be a very intentional thing, or it could be, I think it could be a balance between the two of them, or it could be a very non-aware. Like we hear about teachers talking all the time about how they want to change things, and some of the people that actually come to me are tired of the educational system because they feel like they have their hands tied. They can't actually influence and help these people grow because, for whatever reason, a lot of it being fear. And I would love to get into that when we have an education segment.
Because it's clear that we need an education segment.
It is. It's coming up. Yeah.
We could make this. We could talk about this for days, as there's a lot that needs to change on that side. But guys, I want to wrap up because it's an hour. Man, that hour flies by, huh?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Man, but it's been fun.
Clubhouse.
That's right. It's been fun. Now we're moving the party over to Clubhouse. Jump over there. Find the Good Life After Party over there on Clubhouse. We're going to finish up this conversation. For those of you that joined us, if you're not in Clubhouse, join us next week again, every Thursday, 8 p.m., right here live on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Send it, hit the thumbs up button, send it to your friends, because we are trying to get you guys to live the good life. So until next week, we'll see you over on Clubhouse, guys. Take care.